What's up, wrestling fans? I'm Steven from the Hills Maniacs, and as you all know, it is Wrestlemania season. Wrestlemania, of course, coming up next month as of this recording, on April 6th and 7th or whatever. And when I think of Wrestlemania, there's only one person I feel really is like synonymous with Wrestlemania that like everyone looks back on as maybe even considering him Mr. Wrestlemania. No, I'm not talking about Shawn Michaels, who actually called himself that. I'm referring, of course, to the dead man himself, The Undertaker. And as you all know, he recently retired from WWE for good, or retired from wrestling altogether. His last WrestleMania match was back in 2020 at WrestleMania 36 in the Boneyard match against AJ Styles. So that's kind of the last time we've really seen The Undertaker at WrestleMania. But what stands out about The Undertaker the most, of course, was his undefeated streak at WrestleMania. And over the years it lasted up until WrestleMania 30. I forget exactly what the number was. I think he went 25 and 1 or something like that total overall. But he was undefeated for years at WrestleMania, and there were a lot of really memorable matches that he had. But because of his retirement, there's a lot of superstars that we'll never really get to see him face at WrestleMania, and a lot of superstars that I wish he could have fought during his time where he was defending his streak at WrestleMania. So in this video, I'm going to be looking at 5 current WWE superstars that I feel like would have made really great opponents for The Undertaker at WrestleMania. I think the best opponents for The Undertaker at WrestleMania are the ones that it seems almost impossible for like him to beat. Like even someone like The Undertaker has to struggle with overcoming somebody at WrestleMania, like maybe somebody bigger than him or whatever. Like we saw him against Giant Gonzalez at one point, who wasn't really a wrestler and was just there for that one match. But I think what they were trying to show was that Undertaker could beat that person, somebody bigger than him like that. Now, of course, he won by disqualification, but that's a whole other story. But I think his best opponents are when he has to struggle to win. We saw it with the resiliency of Shawn Michaels and Triple H and that kind of thing. Batista, even these stronger, tougher opponents for Undertaker to overcome, and that really cements why he was so great and so much of a threat at WrestleMania, because The Undertaker could literally beat anybody for the most part. And when I think of some modern superstars that are kind of that tough on the current roster, I would say the first one that comes to mind would definitely be Drew McIntyre. I just think him versus The Undertaker, like fighting for the streak and stuff, at least this rendition of Drew McIntyre, not like the 3MB stuff, not the Drew McIntyre of old, like this current rendition of Drew McIntyre, this fantastic heel that he's been lately, the one going for Seth Rollins in the World Heavyweight Championship, the one that put CM Punk out of commission for a while, and he keeps bringing that up. This version of Drew McIntyre versus like a prime Undertaker, I think those two could have put on a really classic match at WrestleMania. And just to see like Undertaker struggling to beat Drew McIntyre, but then also Drew struggling to beat The Undertaker. Undertaker kicks out of a few claymores or whatever. I think those two would put on a really hard-hitting match, and I think the fans would have really enjoyed it as well. I think it would have been like almost a match of like similar strengths in a way. Like he's the dead man, The Undertaker, he can't be beaten. Drew McIntyre's kind of the same way. Like he's not going to go down without a fight. Those two fighting in the ring in general, let alone at WrestleMania, I think they could put on a clinic in the middle of that ring. And just to see Drew McIntyre come up short at the end or whatever, or even Drew McIntyre, I could see arguably could be the one to beat the streak or something along those lines, like if he had been the first one to ever do it. I think we as the fans could have really got behind a match between those two, and it would have been a believable match as well. Like that seems like something Drew McIntyre would do. He seems like the kind of person that would call out The Undertaker for a match, because of how tough he is. Like, I'm going to prove to everybody that I'm the toughest guy on this roster, and everyone should fear me. I'm going to go beat The Undertaker at WrestleMania. And we don't really have someone like that now, like an opponent of that caliber that, like, for someone like Drew McIntyre to go beat because The Undertaker's retired. If we had somebody like that, I feel like Drew McIntyre would be the one to call them out and actually put on a really good, maybe 20, 30-minute hard-hitting contest. But I definitely think Drew McIntyre and The Undertaker could put on one of those kind of matches. Another heavy hitter that I feel like could maybe put on a similar type of match that like I mentioned, Drew McIntyre. I feel like Bobby Lashley might have been able to do that as well. I mean, we almost got that match like going into WrestleMania 23 or whatever. Like Bobby Lashley was ECW champion, Undertaker won the Royal Rumble. Like they made it seem at least believable that he could call out Bobby Lashley for a match at WrestleMania, and ultimately he chose Batista, the better choice, obviously. But this Bobby Lashley now, I feel like, the almighty gimmick that he's got going on, I feel like him and Undertaker could have had a good match at WrestleMania, because Bobby Lashley is kind of like that Brock Lesnar type person, where, is a former UFC fighter, and he's kind of a heavy hitter, more so than like a technical wrestler and that sort of thing. So I feel like he would be able to go toe-to-toe with The Undertaker and still make it believable that he could be the one to beat The Undertaker, that kind of thing. Putting him in the full Nelson, like, he doesn't really use that as much anymore, or the Lashley lock, I guess is what it was called at the time. But if he would still be using that move, like seeing Undertaker get out of that or whatever, but I still feel like he's the kind of person, like, at least just a one-year opponent, just one WrestleMania, blow-off match, whatever. It's not really a feud with The Undertaker or anything, but I feel like in terms of this current roster, like Bobby Lashley might have been a good opponent for him as well. Next up, when I was trying to think of like perfect opponents for The Undertaker, I kind of wanted to think about people with like spectacle, or people that the fans really get behind or have been getting behind lately. Similar to like Shawn Michaels or Triple H or even Edge, like some of the people that have fought The Undertaker in the past that had this like big like showmanship and everything else to counteract The Undertaker's like terrifying, like the gong and just that whole entrance that he always did, where it was this big spectacle. I think someone to counter that would be Seth Rollins. I just think it'd be kind of funny because like everyone looks at him as like this big clown basically walking around. Like The Rock said, he called him a clown, just the way that outfits that he wears and everything else, and his presence in the ring. Everybody's enjoying this run from Seth Rollins, singing along with his theme song and everything else. But when he does get in the ring, he knows how to put on a serious match. And I think him and The Undertaker could have really done something special together. That clash of styles almost, like Undertaker's the dead man. He's this undead figure that's meant to be this like terrifying person that nobody can beat at WrestleMania, and then you have like Seth Rollins, who's kind of joking around, at least with his entrance, but then proves everybody wrong when he gets in the ring. And I kind of feel like Seth Rollins is almost this modern day Shawn Michaels in a way. He reminds me a lot of Shawn Michaels in terms of like his moveset and just the way he presents himself and everything else. So I feel like him versus The Undertaker might have been a fun match to see at WrestleMania. Just they're two different styles of entrance and all that kind of stuff, like clashing with each other or counteracting each other. I just think would have been a lot of fun just to see. I feel like it could be an entertaining match. Rollins does a couple stomps and The Undertaker keeps kicking out. Rollins kicks out of choke slams or whatever until finally he gets hit with a tombstone. I feel like they could almost put on a 20-minute classic as well. And it's still also for him, like I said with the other two, it would probably be believable that Seth Rollins might be able to pull off a win there. But I just feel like in terms of like these modern people, Seth Rollins is definitely someone who's all about the presentation of his character and his gimmick and everything else. Going up against someone like The Undertaker, I mean, it might have been good for Seth Rollins, especially back when, maybe even if it was the Seth Rollins of old, where he was the architect, like part of the Shield or even part of the Authority, like that whole run that he had, or even the Monday Night Messiah gimmick, whatever. All of Seth Rollins' gimmicks really would have worked for this. I mean, he's essentially the same character with pretty much the same moveset nowadays, but just his presentation is different. And I feel like they could have put on a memorable match that everyone would probably look back to, similar to The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels. Now, when I think of like the current crop of superstars, I tried to think of like who would be like one of the biggest stars going currently on the main roster, and obviously that is the American Nightmare, Cody Rhodes. I feel like him wanting to challenge The Undertaker to a match during the time when his streak was still in existence. I feel like that's something Cody Rhodes would just do because he feels like he has to, or he feels like he could be that person to do it. I feel like it would be similar to when Shawn Michaels was like, I need to beat The Undertaker, and he failed the first time and failed the second time too. But he like had that need where like, I need to go to WrestleMania, I need to beat The Undertaker. And Cody Rhodes could put in the similar work to what he's doing now with him wanting to be the one to beat Roman Reigns. Like him treating this like a championship, like I'm going to be the one to beat The Undertaker at WrestleMania. Cody Rhodes is the type of person to do that. And I feel like him having maybe 2 back-to-back matches just like Shawn Michaels did would really show how good Cody Rhodes actually is in the ring. And maybe finally beating The Undertaker in their second match or something would be the way to go. Like Cody Rhodes being the one to beat the streak. This modern version of Cody Rhodes, that left and came back, not the Stardust, not the old Cody Rhodes even, but this Cody Rhodes that we have now, I think would make a perfect foil to The Undertaker at WrestleMania and be that person that maybe could have beaten him and taken the streak away from him. Cody shows that resiliency better than a lot of other superstars do, and everyone's just behind him as this babyface hero that we all want to see win, at least because he's going up against Roman Reigns, I guess. Like, maybe not everybody likes him, but like, he's definitely a modern, like, John Cena type figure almost. And even his entrance, like I said, with Seth Rollins, it's all about the spectacle. I feel like all of that going up against The Undertaker might have been the right choice and really would have cemented Cody Rhodes' legacy here in WWE had he had the opportunity to go up against The Undertaker and maybe even end the streak. It would have made him a much bigger star than he is now. And even if he does beat Roman Reigns for the Universal Championship this year at WrestleMania, nothing would have compared to him like being the one to beat The Undertaker, I feel like. And finally, I have one more here that I really feel like would have made an awesome match at WrestleMania just to see, at least, even if it is a one-off or whatever, and that's Gunther, the current Intercontinental Champion. We know how hard-hitting he is, the kind of style that he wrestles. He chops everybody and that sort of thing. He's just really aggressive superstar that nobody can seem to beat, especially when it comes to the Intercontinental Championship. And I feel like if he had been wrestling in WWE at the time when The Undertaker still had his undefeated streak, there's no way WWE wouldn't have put him against The Undertaker at WrestleMania. They would have been fools not to, I feel like. He's got that sort of like presence about him where like he's the next big bad villain that nobody can beat. And I think he's going to surpass Roman Reigns even as like he's this next threat that everyone wants to go after to try and beat because he's just unstoppable. And to have someone like The Undertaker fighting him at WrestleMania, it would be really believable if Gunther was able to beat The Undertaker at WrestleMania and beat the streak and everything else. It doesn't even have to have a title involved or nothing, obviously. But just seeing Gunther throw The Undertaker around like a cruiserweight or whatever and just chopping the life out of The Undertaker would be like really awesome to see, because you're not used to seeing The Undertaker or someone like The Undertaker getting beat up in that kind of way. Especially in his younger years when the streak was first starting out, or even during the Attitude Era and that whole period of time, or the later stages of his streak before he started getting a little bit older and slower in the ring and stuff. Seeing that version of The Undertaker being thrown around and chopped around by Gunther, I feel like would have surprised a lot of people. And maybe if Gunther could have really used a win there, like if he would have been the one to beat The Undertaker, we'd all look back on that as like, yeah, Gunther's a threat. He should be in the main event. He should be the World Heavyweight Champion. And they probably would have strapped the belt on him at that point too. Whether it was Gunther from NXT when he was Walter or Gunther now, it's like either version of him I feel like would have been the perfect foil for The Undertaker at WrestleMania. And to either have The Undertaker overcome even him would show how powerful The Undertaker is, or Gunther beating The Undertaker would show how much of a threat Gunther is to everyone else on the roster. Like, look at how powerful I am. I beat the unstoppable Undertaker. Nobody can beat me. And then, you could build a story around that where somebody eventually does. I feel like there's a lot of story potential there as well. I just wish the Undertaker was able to still wrestle in this modern era. Like, we could see some classics between him and some of these modern guys. But there you go, guys. Those were 5 superstars that I would have loved to have gotten to see face the Undertaker at WrestleMania. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments section. Also, what was your favorite Undertaker WrestleMania match? For me personally, I think it was both his matches with Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 25 and 26. But let me know all that down in the comments section. Also, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more. We will be doing our WrestleMania predictions in the next few weeks as well at some point, probably in the week leading up to WrestleMania, so keep an eye out for that as well. Thank you for watching the video, everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.